My apologies again, I just a couple of minutes late. Josh, could I invite you to centre us, please, with Karakia?
Mīnoi tātou. He horori e korore ki te atu e maunga rongo ki te whenua ke whakaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa āmene. To you there is kei te pai.
I got out of my car when I got here and noticed some local going to work with a hat on, and I thought, gosh, why do you have to have a hat on? It's always so warm here. I leave Queenstown with a jersey on and get up here and find what do I bring that jersey for. It's always lovely. So.
We do live in paradise, Bruce.
Oh, you do.
We do.
We do. Yeah. I sent my family a picture of the beach this morning from my hotel, and I said, some days at work are really hard. Right. Do we have apologies at all? Or
Yes,
anything?
Councillor Robinson.
Oh, we do. Yes, he's not here. Yes. I think the meeting, because of death, is reasonably straightforward. I'm very appreciative of what we've got, but I do plan to try and mosey through at a reasonable speed. Does mosey and speed go together? Is that oxymoronic? I don't know, but I'm hoping that we might be finished by the end of the morning. So look, if assuming then everybody else can be here, in which case I'll move that we sustain.
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, it's carried. Thank you. Is there any matters on the agenda that your interests need to be raised? Actually, Heather, just for note, I do need to give you an updated, just a minor changing, but none of them are on my working stage. Minutes of our last meeting, 13 March, at least the open session. In front of us there, we're the chair will take it to a correct record. Do I have a second? Josh, correctness, accuracy, any comments you can make on that? Pretty much like the meeting you were at. Okay, well that's good. Well, I'll put the motion in that case. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against is carried. Matters from it. Was Ed can say something about?
Yes, through you, Chair, just a short update on the process. We were at our insurance renewal process.
Is Andrew with us somewhere? Oh, Andrew, oh, here. I'm still driving my car, I think, Andrew. Sorry about that, mate.
You can do it now. Okay, sweet.
Through the Chair. Yes, I have two updates with the Council Insurance. And with that, the first one is Council is waiting on Tauranga City Council to review their loss limit for the infrastructure policy. And we here at Council have a $250 million loss limit with our infrastructure assets valued at over $634 million. And we will still be able to update that loss limit before the 1st of November, which is the renewal date, if Tauranga has not got their loss limit in place.
Just clarification, what that loss limit is the maximum amount we can claim. So the assets are worth a lot more, and it's basically on a probability of an event occurs, and what's the maximum amounts, which is why we are looking to increase our loss limit based on the probability studies that we had provided to you last year, but we couldn't do it because of where we're with the BOPLAS. You have to all one or other. So that's still pending in terms of, as Andrew just said, the situation with the overall view of the BOPLAS requirements. So at this stage, we've still got our old loss limits.
Can I just check? Oh, sorry, Andy, go for it.
Yeah, thanks. We had Harley and Gabriel in the same year. Would a loss limit be for 1 year or would it be for one incident?
Okay. Cumulative, so that's yes, cumulative for that.
And just let me check, the 250 you've said we want to change, is that because of our value of our assets going up, or is it because we have gained a sense that the likely impact of an event would be greater than $250 million?
Both.
Both? Yeah.
Both. So the assessment was the probability of loss, and then what is your total value of assets? So both were assessed at that in an earthquake or what is the amounts that you would expect it to be seeing, and that suggested that we needed to increase our overall loss limits.
And again, the loss limit is including the provisions we have for our underground assets, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
both.
We recognise it's both above ground and below ground. This is our ability to try and insure our pipes, bits and pieces as well.
That's right.
Okay, Andrew, well, that's really helpful. Interesting, I was just at Tauranga yesterday. We had the final meeting of the commissioners out of interest. So,
Interesting.
25 July, I think 23rd July, I think is the date they declare the results of the elections. So they might have a wee bit to go yet. So that's
Is it
good.
open now, Bruce?
Pardon?
Is nominations open now?
They just
Nominations have closed. They must vote on the 23rd of July. So,
okay.
so they're all in madness of politicking there at the moment.
Just on that loss limit, the reason for increasing that, is there a cost to increasing that, having the limit increased?
Yes.
There is.
There will be, and they will assess it, yes.
So the reason why we would increase it, the only time we're really going to be impacted at that level is going to be a catastrophic event, isn't it?
Correct.
And so insurance is to mitigate the financial losses that we could not afford. And if we did have that event of that amount, and we had 250 and it was 300, that's 50 million extra that we would be paying. So most of our stages is mitigating that financial impact to council in an event that we couldn't afford to do. And so the loss limits is giving us an indication, if that occurred, this is the amount that you could expect, or probability based on what you have. And you have the option to say, no, we're going to keep it at a lower rate, pay reduced premiums, which on a per annum basis, you're quite right, that's what you pay. It might be an extra 200,000 or 300,000, but the risk that you face is if an event did occur of that amounts, that you might be facing up to an extra 200 million.
The other important part about this, Rob, I'm not, sorry, you're opening what is actually a very important strategic question about who holds the risk. And this is where our work as a committee really should come into play, is to where is the right balance about the risk that we hold. So this loss limit's actually really important for that reason. It's also really important for the fact that it effectively covers our 40% in the event of a catastrophe or a disaster, so that under the current convention we could claim the balance of the 60 off the Crown. So there's a level of obligation here as well. So if we had Aon in the room, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, if I'm taking this down the right track, that's why I wanted to know that there are two things. One is as the value of our assets increase, and invariably they do, given we're on a depreciated replacement cost basis. We need to adjust our loss limit to take account of that. Because if you think of the 40-60 rule, if we don't do that, we get out of whack with the 40-60 rule, because it's the current replacement cost we'd want covered. So that it almost automatically means that from time to time we would need to consider lifting that limit. The other aspect then is actually the probability. What is the likelihood of us facing an event? And I guess inherent in the probability loss calculation is actually, it's the maximum probable loss, isn't it? So it certainly is the limit that we think we would face at any one point. Bearing in mind that we are of the, I mean, this game that we're playing with our insurers, it's not we're playing, all the country has this. We won't have 100% of our assets taken out at any one time. So the 250, at some point, now it's within the last couple of years,
Yes, it was last year, we were trying to get it.
we worked with Aon as being that sort of maximum probable loss that we would face in any one event. So that's where that comes from. So that's a risk assessment. This could be the sort of size we'd expect to have. We need to have it. It's part. You know, I'm focusing on the 40% because ultimately our position with the Crown and any of the disasters we've faced over the last, since for a long time, but certainly over the last couple of years, it's relevant on that one. It becomes important. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And just to confirm that study had a low probability, sort of a medium probability and a high probability. I think we were between the moderate that we were going for. So we didn't actually, which the upper limit would have been more. And basically, some of that is also the replacement costs of the markets goes more, or it costs an awful lot more to replace than what your value of your assets are. Based in Christchurch earthquake, those are the kind of things. So that's kind of the loss limit increasing from what we had before.
Great. Sorry, Andrew, no, I think you said, sorry, were there any other questions? No? Andrew, I think you said you had three.
Oh, yes.
That was number one.
Yes,
I'm now moving my meeting back to 1 o'clock. Thanks, Andrew.
The other insurance update is we have an insurance policy that we follow, and work is currently underway with the third task. And what that third task was, we have about 5 different insurance schedules. So you have an infrastructure, you have a material damage, you have a fleet vehicle, you have a forestry schedule. So those schedules, we're going to use an improved framework criteria for choosing what gets insured and what doesn't. So that's a method I'm going to choose for making better decisions going forward. I will have a draft in place for that framework by the end of July, and that will meet our insurance renewal, which is the 1st of November. That will meet that timeline.
Just in clarification, and if the framework is significantly different to what we have now, we would come back to the audit and risk to say, what are we insuring, what are we not, and what were the changes to why we believe it doesn't need to be included within the overall schedules. And so that might be an individual event, even an earthquake. So for low value assets like toilet conveniences, are you replacing that? What are the things, criteria? So just to make sure that overall, what is council then absorbing that loss, will come back to audit and risk just to give you an indication of what that means.
Andrew, that's really helpful. That gets me then to just looking at our governance plan on page 11. So clearly, a significant bit of our meeting on the 9th needs to be related to our insurances. That's the critical point. We last chance, Lou, sort of, with our insurers before we renew on 1 November. So it seems logical that you would bring that. All I'd like to ask there, Andrew and Pauline, is and I hear your point, and I get if there's any significant strategic change you need to have for 1 November, could I just ask that you firstly let me know, because it might be that we need to pre-circulate something before the 9th, because you might even need a risk view prior to the 9th, because the 9th is only 21 days out from when the renewal occurs. So if I could just ask that you hold that, and we have that as a sort of a fallback.
Yes.
The 9th then becomes a really important sign off on our strategy. That would be good.
Yeah.
People happy with that, by the way? So we're going to an optimised set of schedules. And I suspect that means we'll be starting to look at what actually we do insure. Is there anything that we actually don't carry insurance on. And then we've got the loss limit idea, the bigger picture relative to those updated schedules. Yes, Rob, I think you're about to move this on.
Just on that, while we are on the insurance side, we did have a discussion around, we're not insuring bridges in this district because of the cost involved, and because of what's happened with the cyclones, it sort of came home to roost where we've ended up with this whole group of bridges that don't qualify for any government funding. So, we can sit here and that's not a cost to council, but it's a real cost to the people that are sitting on the other side of these rivers that can't get to their properties, which is just taking value out of their livelihoods overnight type thing. So we did have a discussion around maybe having a look at identifying that group of bridges around the district and seeing how many there are that would be in that wouldn't qualify, at having a look at what is the cost of insuring them, because we can all sit here and say this ain't going to happen again, but the risk of it happening again is quite high. So
That's a good
conversation.
I mean, that's a really good discussion. Has that been taking? I take it, has that been happening at council level? Has it, Rob?
Well, Mr. Barry would be able to talk about
The chair, we only insure one bridge. There was a policy decision made back in the day, and so this is something that's very top of mind, particularly for Pauline and Tim around the funding of these bridges or lack thereof, because we haven't had insurance.
So the other thing that comes with that, and can I be honest, given what you see this playing out in Wellington right at the moment, it's very public the way it's playing out, so I can raise it. Because actually it raises questions about so what's our strategy? And I suspect we'll find our rates will be prohibitive, as in our premium rates would be prohibitive to probably go after. If we want to go for 100% of our bridges, let's just go to the other extreme. It raises questions from a prudence perspective. Do we or should we be building a fund that is a self-insurance fund? I mean, that's the argument that's going to, I raise Wellington because that's the argument at the moment, which is that their particular situation is actually we need to sell our airport shares to build a perpetual investment fund because we will have insurance costs in the future, which we will have to meet because we can't insure. So, I mean, that's even a bigger picture. I suspect it's one of the ones that we should probably have on our bring up for probably your next LTP, Nadine, because that's the sort of time you'd have to be thinking about that. And of course it does raise issues. I mean, the issue for Wellington is what are our investments, and so...
what can we sell? Is there something people can think of?
Without broadening this conversation, you know where I'm going, Josh, so I just leave that, I'll let that one hang in the air at this stage, okay? So look, that's going to be a really important meeting on the 9th around insurance, and if we can think about the bridge thing too, albeit I think by the 9th we've really just got to be nailing the insurance. Yes.
Can I ask just of Mr. Barry and Nadine, so us only insuring one bridge in our region with decisions we made way back, is that common practice across the country, or?
I think it's only Hastings that maybe insure.
No.
I don't know how many bridges they have relative to us, because remember we're a regional council.
Yeah, they just did the city council.
Yeah, so the other thing about that too, the other thing is that they this ties in nicely with the strategic review of our roading network. So going through that process of identifying our assets and which ones would retire, then we'll get a better sense of what we can insure.
It's not like we're an outlier, that's what I'm trying to say.
No, there wouldn't be many, I think, local authorities that would actually insure their bridges. And that's because, again, there's been, and I think you have to bring the recovery approach that we are going through now and with that review, because we're starting to see some of the funding issues that go with ownership. But I mean, to date we've had the benefit of a different, probably, way in which NZTA's worked with us, so the ground is always changing.
Yeah, it's possibly a reflection of what's been happening around the Motu, because there's probably more reluctance for insurance companies to insure bridges. That will reflect in an exorbitant cost.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, that's where it also fits in, and I like what you're saying, Nadine, and what you're obviously doing, Tim, is just the whole issue of bridges full stop.
Yeah.
and their cost is a magic straw on local governments. Back if I can try and mix my analogy. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Andrew. I'm appreciative that you've given us that insight and remain reasonably forefront for this committee. And Rob, we need to keep it as you've raised quite well within that risk framework. Is there anything with the governance plan that we should be noting? I did check with Steve, which is that Daniel's got off with white spaces for the next 3 meetings when they should all be yellow in my view. So I expect to see Daniel here for those. Is there anything else here that we need to note at this stage, team? We're okay? Looks pretty good to me. Rightio. I don't think we have a particular motion in relationship. No, that's where we're at. Great, thank you. So that's a long way of getting back to some of the more formalities. I don't think we leave of absence. Today, I haven't got any extraordinary business. I haven't been informed of any. No. There's a motion. There's nothing that we're holding over. There's nothing I propose to hold over. And that gets us up to item 10, which effectively is strategic.
Through the chair, I'll take the report as read and draw the committee's attention to page 14 of the report, which has the summary table of all of our assessed strategic risks to date and the strategic risk heat map. As you can see from the first table, there hasn't been any change in our residual risk assessments from the previous report. It does identify 4 strategic risks that remain serious, and in reference to the heat map below, I think it's appropriate to advise a committee that 3 of the risks are linked: finance, recovery, asset management, primarily driven by the significant impact of the recovery efforts on council business. And I'll come on to that further into the report. The remaining risk, natural environment, it is remaining at serious, and it will form the next piece of work around a more rigorous residual risk assessment of our natural environment strategic risk. The 2 things there is that we do wish to revisit the risk bow tie to ensure that that does accurately reflect the type of risk we understand we're talking about, and to test the identified controls to see whether they are effective, and if not, what further treatments are required. So that is a piece of work that will form the next activity ahead of the October committee meeting. And alongside natural environment, the overall council strategy strategic risk, we've held off on assessing that risk at this point because we are right at the end stage of adopting the 3-year plan, and it's appropriate to allow that adoption to take place. We have certainty from which we can with the council strategic risk. Moving on to the individual strategic risks that have been assessed. The first one is our finance strategic risk, and I'll defer to our Chief Financial Officer for more detail around the drivers of that risk. But it's fair to say that a number of those drivers are relating back to recovery, and again, adoption of the 3-year plan around the doability of what we're setting out to achieve under the 3-year plan. That is being covered in more detail in our deep dive session under public excluded. And I draw the committee's attention to point 9, just picking up on our previous insurance discussion. As part of the renewal process, we are also using our experience of our Cyclone Gabrielle claims process to inform that renewal process. We are part of the BOPLAS collective of councils and are working with our colleagues through that mechanism. to identify through their experience also what appropriate changes may need to be made to our policies through this renewal process. Page 16, the recovery strategic risk. We have adopted a strategic risk bow tie for recovery prior to Christmas, and we have used the intervening period to do a sense check on the effectiveness of that bow tie. And as a result, we are in the middle of progressing that residual risk assessment work. It has identified areas through engaging with our program managers around where we think we may need to make further changes to the controls under the bow tie, and also in particular being more definite around the causes of our recovery risk event. So that is still a work in progress, and we intend to come back to this committee in October with a finalised strategic risk bow tie and an updated residual risk assessment. At this point, the residual risk assessment still remains at serious, but we have much greater clarity and understanding of what the actual drivers of that serious risk are, and are working with the recovery team and wider management around what kind of changes may need to be required as a result of that work. I'll also draw your attention, so the recovery strategic risk, given its impact on our asset management risk, the intention is then to use the learnings from our recovery work to inform the asset management strategic risk and its drivers. And on the same page 16, item 13, around the provision of water to the community. Again, that is picked up under the deep dive in terms of the doability, setting out to achieve under the 3-year plan. The uncertainties or the emerging risks or potential risks around that particular aspect still remains with the government not yet determining its position regarding how 3 waters are going to be provided. So that there is a level of uncertainty as a result of that. But the approach going into this is for ourselves determining what's best for our community in terms of the quality of service provided and its affordability. I've already spoken to the natural environment strategic risk. Moving on to people and capability, we've provided substantively more information regarding this particular strategic risk, and again I'll defer to our director with regard to this particular risk, but at this point, with the further information provided, I trust we are giving this committee more assurance around how we're managing this particular risk. And again, we are in a changing operating environment which provides both opportunity and its own challenges. But at this stage, while the risk remains at major, we continue to apply effort to get the performance, statistical performance measure back with an appetite. Moving on to the treaty commitments, strategic risk. Again, the same approach that we took with recovery, we've taken with treaty commitments, where we took the ingoing risk bow tie and have tested it internally with how it looks from an operational perspective. And we are using that process to inform whether or not we've got the risk bow tie where it needs to be, and is it an accurate reflection of our operating environment. At this point, the risk is at major, and that is because we have identified the appropriate treatments to introduce, and we are in the process of doing that we are yet to see the impact of those treatments, that if they all go according to plan, I'll be confident of coming back to this committee in October with a revised residual risk, ideally getting us back to within appetite. That's the intention at this point with regard to implementation of managing our treaty commitment strategic risk. Business continuity strategic risk is assessed at moderate, and we have recently completed a scenario exercise with our strategic crisis management team. The intention there is to test our business continuity plans in practice. That has identified areas of work on, and at this point the next step will be to test again with further scenario incidents with our civil defence emergency management team to ensure that the proposed changes we are identifying as a result of the work to date do actually work in practice in an actual emergency event. Through the chair, Steve, just on the treaty set, there being it major, could you give us an example of what other direct treaty, or an example of a direct treaty settlement thing that brings us to this point? Is this mainly around relationships? Would that be fair to say? Or? Through Chair, we're in a little bit of a two-step process in terms of how we manage this risk. So at this point, the risk focus is internal. Do we have the internal processes and systems to support us as council being an effective treaty partner? So within that, do we have the policies and processes in place? We're testing those. And then the next step is around consistency across the organisation. So are we, as an organisation, across each of our business areas of business, being consistent in how we apply those policies and processes? So that's where the risk assessment is sitting currently as at major, in that we are further validating that we have the right policies and processes in place. And the other part to this is, are we across the organisation following them consistently? So that's where we're at currently. Once we get our own house in order, that's when we will look externally to how we are engaging with our treaty partners and what that operating environment looks like.
Oh, I've also got Jean here online. I think you might want to intervene at this point, Jean. So please, thank you.
Tēnā koutou. Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for allowing me in. I just probably wanted to clarify the question that was asked first before I offer some whakaaro, but is it that you were asking Councillor Telfer, I guess, on what basis or rationale are we undertaking this work? Is that correct?
No, not what rationale, but I was just trying to work out, was this really more around relationships rather than it's obviously council's internal process. That's the way it's been asked.
Thank you, and through you again, Mr. Chair. It's definitely an and I think at times the relationship can often be the quality or status of a relationship can often be influenced by the way we work in our systems and our processes. So definitely an and that if we not only are able to display systems, processes, and also data to support those systems and processes in terms of what we do and how we do in regards to our treaty commitments and requirements, that then should inform us as an organisation in terms of, like you said, is it just about relationship? No, it's absolutely about our processes, but also it allows us to grow a bit of a database and a knowing as an organisation of what we've done, what works, what we need to do less of, and what we need to do more of.
Yeah, Larry.
So how do we, in that light, how do we compare with other councils? We're a major, And I see the work that's gone over the years to try and upskill ourselves internally. But so, how are we compared with other councils in this process?
Jean, I wonder whether that might be a question you have a view on. I certainly have.
We're a major.
I can bring a view.
I can imagine that other councils would be way higher if there's anything higher than serious.
Sorry, Jean, you had a comment?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't have the definitive answer to that. Apologies, Councillor. But we can go away and find out where we compare. But I think what you'll find, just as I guess, a lay of the land, and particularly in interactions with others in our regional sector, is it's definitely context dependent. It's dependent on the relationships within your region, and obviously whatever the region significantly issues are of significance regionally and the likes. But we will certainly come back with something.
Comment through the chair. So through to Uru Kahika, the special interest group Ngā Kairapu commissioned a piece of work that looked at the capability and capacity of local government sector regional councils in terms of the ability or the capacity to be able to engage and be responsive in this area. And what it did show is that a lot of councils were starting from a low base. In fact, where there was capacity and capability tended to be from the likes of Bay of Plenty councils that had Māori representation embedded through legislation at the governance level and flowed down. So it was fair to say that nationally the regional sector has a lot of work to do to build both capability and capacity internally, but also supporting the capability building of Māori hapu externally as well, in our role in facilitating that.
So, Larry, just one thing, and I want to reflect this. Yes, we have it at major, but often we in risk discussions talk about what's its direction of travel, or what they sometimes use as the word is velocity. So I think if we were using that idea of travel, the arrow you would associate with travel is that it's going down.
Yeah.
The assumption is that we have, through the risk assessment and bow tie work, we've got some actions in place. So that's particularly in paragraph 35. I think if I've picked you up, Steve and Jean, what we're saying is get steps 1 to 3 in paragraph 35 done, and we'll be able to reduce that from major to moderate and meet our risk appetite. Correct?
That's correct.
Yes. So I think what we're saying is the direction of travel is right, and even though major seems, oh, this is a bit red lighty, are we in some way bad? I don't think we should take it in that light. Yeah, sorry, Red, I think you
Is everyone finished with that one? Because I want to talk about finance risk.
Look, yes, I will. So let's check, because I took Rob's question, and I don't know whether there was anything else you wanted to say, because I think...
I'm happy to take the rest of the report as read, Chair.
Okay, Red, so we're into finance.
So something caught my eye, Steve, on page 15 of 55, if you go to number 6. I thought it was a typo, but maybe there's a misunderstanding by myself, that if the reduction in the emergency works go ahead, it may create a minor funding gap. I thought it would create a major funding gap for us. Sorry, on what point? So it's number 6, paragraph 6 said if they carry on with, you know, that we just submitted on the proposed reduction in the emergency work far rate from +20 to +10, that it would create a minor gap. I thought that would be a major gap.
That would, and that's one of the emergency risks that we're talking in the deep dive. What this was saying, there was also an issue. As at the 1st of July, we didn't have our program of confirmed work, and that wasn't going to be until September. But the budget 2024 identified that we were going to get some emergency works funding, and they confirmed that. So that was prior to that. We've got enough for next year, but there is an ongoing issue. But in terms of the emerging risk, which is also coming through if future events occur post that 1st of July 25, yeah, there is an increasing gap from what we've actually got provided So there was two parts. One, we
So
didn't
we're
hear about...
conflating two issues in paragraph 6,
Sounds like
because I'm still confused. It's not, because to me, when, what we spoke about in the submission we made is that there's a possibility that if this goes ahead, there's a major funding gap for the Gisborne District Council going forward. Pauline, you were also talking about something else.
I was reading number 5 and I wasn't reading number 6. So yes, you were right. It is a major risk.
Chocolate fish to
For you, yes, sorry, I should read.
waiting for my chocolate fish.
Yes, I will definitely owe you.
But anyway, just seriously, this is a real issue for us and we have submitted on it. And we are watching with bated breath to see what the direction of travel for NZTA is because in effect, all they are doing is taking a funding obligation they have and dumping it on the Gisborne District Council or whoever is the person in an emergency situation.
And it comes back to Rob's discussion, really, it's risk transfer.
Yep, it is risk transfer.
You know, this is the point where, you know, when you were raising about the bridges or even about the maximum profit loss, that's a choice about where we retain the risk. This is an externality that is imposing on us risk of ownership. So, yeah. Significant. We might look at that when we come to the paper on the 3-year plan, Red. So we shouldn't lose sight of that. Given to be honest, I'm making some assumptions. We're still expecting rain in this district, and we'll still expect events which may rise.
Keeping it away.
Am I allowed to say that in the room? But you'll say, please, not now. But,
not now.
But thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Larry.
I've got a question on people and capability, page 17 on the graph. And we're running at 19.4. And in the past, I know that we upped our salary count to match that of other regions, but it still doesn't seem to be helping with our staff turnover, and particularly this year, consistently we've been pretty high compared to last year. So is there, I know there's a lot of demand for these roles, but at the moment now there's quite a lot of public servants that are losing jobs and everything. Does this fit, is this in the situation, would this help this situation with our predicament?
I'm happy to respond to that through the chair. So you can actually see in this graph the impacts of us having done that move.
Yeah,
particularly
last year.
That's right.
We'll come back.
Yeah, that's right. So the market is very much moving. One of the issues that we face is that the local government salary market isn't keeping a step with the broad national salary market. So that's probably linked to affordability and who actually pays. You know, the private sector can set their own rates. They don't have to answer to their ratepayers in their community in the same way that we do. And so there is a gap, an ongoing gap between, I guess, average salary rates in the local government sector globally across the nation as against the national market as well. So we're starting to feel the impacts of that. And yeah, so, you know, like I think local government is sort of trending at around a 4 to 5%, and nationally it's more like a 7% or 7.5%. So you'll see in the commentary that I've included in this report, and it has been noted that we've added more commentary, which has been in response to the last meeting more than anything, where there was a number of questions asked around you know, what the sort of trends coming out of exit interviews, and you can actually see that salary has been mentioned again. So I guess that's the impact of us being in a labour market where we're competing not only with local government itself, but actually the private sector as well.
Yeah.
So I'm actually some of, do you want to?
Oh, it's just, just hot off the press.
Hot off the press.
And it's on RNZ around how looking at salaries across Australia and New Zealand. And if you get a chance to have a look at it, there's a document that they've linked to in there that provides some key insights around employees, their preferences. Says 77% of employees are currently looking or planning to look for a new job, and salary is the number one determinant. And I would also say, given the cost of living, that makes sense now, right? That it's not about we can't afford to pay, it's actually the affordability.
They can't afford to live.
It's these people are looking
And you'll note in the report I make special mention particularly around mortgage interest rates. So, you know, we're not unlike other employers where a lot of staff are coming off fixed term mortgage rates and moving to quite, you know, I myself have had 100% increase. You know, I come off it, I'm happy to share my information, you know, a 2.79 to a 6.85, you know, and
It's massive.
it's massive. So people, you know, and we're providing, you know, we've got some Finance 101 stuff coming through in our Wellbeing Wednesdays, etc., to assist staff with that sort of thinking and stuff. Like people are having to restructure their mortgages. You know, they thought they're going to pay their loan off in 20 years. They have to stretch it back out over 30 from an affordability factor. All of that is absolutely having an impact on people's desire to earn more. That's just to live.
I would think, Larry, in my pick, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, James, the situation currently is really dynamic. So I would think we need to look at this and probably make stronger conclusions over the next quarter.
Yeah.
Would be my view. Look, it's interesting, and I say this carefully because I've been in Wellington for 2 weeks. But 2 weeks ago, you could have said Wellington was in deep gloom. You would be surprised how gloomy it is down there with this changed employment market, whether that benefits us, for instance.
Yeah, that's what
know
my next question, actually.
how we all adjust to the cost of living, you know, crisis as we're taking it, how people feel our tax cuts. You know, these are things which I think that the context currently, James, is really dynamic. So I saw your point. Yes, we're trending back up. Honestly, mate, we'll get a 1 year sugar rush with. Sorry, I'm not surprised. But having said that, given the broader context, really, it'd be interesting to see over the quarter where that's running.
So just a couple of points, and it's noted in the report. We have seen some of the impacts of, I guess, increased immigration. But I would note, and it's had some influence, but immigration's typically benefited the larger sectors, so you've seen a concentration of that migration flow into Auckland and Waikato, Hamilton area in particular. We have seen definitely an uptick in the quality of applicants that we are getting in roles, and that we are linking that in terms of the impacts of the public service cuts in Wellington. However, that tends to be benefiting roles that might be more suited to being remote. So not necessarily seeing people move from Wellington to Gisborne, and there are just some roles that need people to be boots on the ground. So yeah, that's noted in the report. We have certainly seen, like, you know, quite a good step change in terms of the quality of applications. But equally, I've had a role recently where we had 46 applicants and no one was suitable.
Thank you for that. Yes, Colin.
Thank you, Bruce. With the treaty discussion, there's some very subjective, I think it is, subjective measures. When it comes to employment and our measure of the culture in the council, what tools do we use to measure the culture and whether or not the culture is impacting on staff turnover?
Sorry, I'm just trying to, are you talking, I'm just trying to get the connect to the treaty partnerships. So I can talk about sort of culture.
It's a very relationship thing based in the treaty partnership, I believe, I would have thought. And so this is the relationship part of employment, I think, is very important. Not just dollars that people leave, come and go on a job. It's the culture within that business. And I'm just wondering, how does the council approach measuring the culture in the workplace?
Okay, I can tag team probably with Anita on this one, but in terms of workplace culture, we do hold surveys. So you'll see some information in paragraph 31 where we've had a bit of a focus on wellbeing because we've got a temperature for that, but our exit interviews are really a good source of data. around reasons and rationale for why people are leaving, and I've done a good piece in there, and there's a whole raft of things in there. Some of it's salary, some of it's people going overseas. We've seen quite a few people going overseas for a whole host of reasons. What we've done in terms of intervention is say, go for your OE, we'll hold your job open, come back. Or we try and get people to buy houses and pets. So, yeah, just we do use a product called Ask Your Team. A lot of councils use it, and it's we've got a full staff engagement survey coming up later this year. So we need to do that, but we can do pulse surveys, and that's how we sort of test the temperature. It's all anonymous data. We have really high participation rates, which is unheard of in local government. I think the average participation rate's in the 60 percentile, and we consistently get over 95%, almost closer to 100% every time. So we've got a really good... Sorry?
Exit interviews.
Oh no, this is around when we do culture surveys and health surveys and wellbeing surveys. We're really, really good. That's one of the things we're really proud about in this organisation is people participate, which gives us really good insight from a data perspective as well. So, you know, we've got lots of different avenues for people to have voice around, you know, workplace culture, how things are going in teams. We've got a good geared up HR team. We've got a chief of culture and development in the organisation. So I think in terms of the assessment of culture and impact of culture on the organisation, we're quite well placed. It's quite a focus. It's in Nadine's KPIs. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else wanted to comment to that. Sorry, I can't. In terms of the connection to the treaty partnership stuff, yeah, we've got you know, good relationships with our staff here that are of Māori descent. The work that the sector's doing in Ngā Kairapu is a really good indicator of sort of how we connect with that mahi as well. There's actually stuff in law in the LGA specific to Māori employment as well. But I guess, you know, we're a multicultural organisation built on bicultural foundations, and that's probably the same as the nation.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful, and so firstly, James, thank you for the additional information. I think it is really helpful from that perspective. And 3031, paragraphs 30 and 31 did interest me, and even for exactly your question, how do we know what we're doing inside the organisation, and Nadine, thank you that we've got that information, because it is important. I know it's something which is close to you as the employer of staff, but it's great to know that that's the case. Do you have any other questions on our paper? Steve, I'd just like to round off back to the graph on top of page 14. The conversation today, Steve, has answered my question, which I gave you before the meeting, which was, are we getting used to seeing serious and getting complacent? My concern is that we see it at successive committee meetings, we just see serious, oh yeah, okay, cool. You know, and I'm appreciative of the conversation that we've had this morning, that actually we take all of those serious ones seriously. I know that sounds, it's overusing the phrase. And we have got some action in place to deal with those, which I think for all your council colleagues is an important message they need to hear, which is our profile is difficult. And we're going to come back to the 3-year plan, your finance one and what have you. These are real issues. But I'm comfortable with Steve that we've got a sense of a framework here. I perhaps would just ask the question, in adopting this motion, we are wanting to actually also set a tone at the top. These risks are important. We've got, we need to focus on these. Nadine, is there anything from a support perspective of this committee to you as Chief Executive around these that we haven't touched on or we should touch on we want to raise at this point? Because I guess my point is, we've identified these as risks. We know where they sit relative to our risk appetite, and we're outside of it. So we're saying, please focus on these. Do you need more from us?
Well, no, it's a really good question. through the chair. I think,
Okay.
yeah, I think it's...
I made a meal of it, sorry, but I'm glad I got there.
I think so the whole challenge was put forward, or not the challenge, but when we developed up with you, the 3-year recovery plan was about being, brutally prioritising what we need to be focusing on. Yeah, I think in some areas it has laxed a bit, and we are seeing a bit more unrealistic expectations around our staff ability to deliver on some work programs. So I think we need to have more honest conversations around reining that back in. And I also think that just given the context within which we are working in Te Rāwhiti is uniquely different to some of the other areas, and so having an appreciation for those challenges for a small unitary to be able to deliver and make this all looking green would be lovely if we could. But at this stage, given all the things that we are going through with recovery, with the lack of funding, it is challenging. So just being aware of those externalities that are impacting and what the pressure that does to staff as well.
Yes, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I'm interested in what moves them. When I look at finance and Sarah's there, out of the blue we get an announcement that we're going to get 35 million for potholes. Does that move it? How does it move?
The state highways, not
Yeah, but
roads.
in general terms,
Well, I might help the state highway too if I could pass on a
if we get
comment.
an injection of funds from somewhere, is it, one of the real
I mean, that's the key point when I talk about velocity. What's the direction of travel here? And I think, we can tick off we're going in the right direction with 3 commitments with the plan that we've got. The question would be probably with actually as you adopt the 3-year plan, does it give us any more certainty around, for instance, around our financial risk?
what would move it?
And what would move it? Yes, exactly, what would move it?
And I think the chair, if you look at it through your kind of risk appetite, so does your risk appetite increase over that period of time or decrease, given that we are constantly in a serious mode, and we know that unless we're going to get $750 million dollars for our roading repair, and unless we're going to be able to adequately address all our infrastructure to the limit that we need to, because we know when we went into this 3-year recovery plan, we need about 20% rates increase to actually get on top of all the work. And if we're never going to be living in that space, are we always going to be serious? Because is that the appetite where you set it at a governance level? So at some point there's a revisit around what our risk appetite is and whether this changes. Because I would say, if it is currently how it is in your risk appetite, we will always be serious because we are not going to be able to afford to deliver what we actually need to deliver.
So that raises, Andy, I love your point, by the way, and I think that's why I wanted to come back to just looking down that current level column, and are we happy, or rather, are we comfortable that the right sort of mitigations are in place? I also look at it from another angle, which is actually some of these are reliant on others whom we don't control, and you've just raised one, central government. Now, I'm not having a crack here at central government, but they are so influential in actually whether these move at all. I mean, to go back to your phrase, what moves the dial? So we've got a combination of, are we doing the right work we can, while we're also reliant on some external players. And I think actually at the moment, we are really reliant on external players. You take another matter mentioned here, Three Waters. Again, we're not just reliant on central government, we're probably reliant on the feeling of some of our neighbouring councils, if I can press a point. So, that's got to be there as well. Harry?
Just while finance is serious, it's going to be obvious that natural environment and asset management is going to remain serious as well, because they're so connected.
Exactly. So one of the things that will interest me, I hate to suggest workshops and suggesting that, but Steve, somewhere, we have the correct practice of a review of these, and are they still relevant? I think we know they're relevant. The question is to come back to the Dean, and actually the one that's Andy's doing, what really is our risk appetite. And I wonder with the next meeting, given we're going to look at overall council strategy, which really gets back to that, I wonder if we shouldn't be trying to move this debate further down the track so we can reassess where we're at. Could I just leave that as an open action? I'm very happy to be involved in that discussion with you and Nadine as to whether we take it forward. But Andy, I just like your question. They're all very good questions, so but we're not going to answer them directly at the moment, unfortunately.
It does come back to complacency if we.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's right. We're not doing anything. We're not helping Nadine in the process either, because A, will be unsatisfied, and B, Nadine won't have or whatever direction to go. Can we go to the resolution, please? Which is, you can find it very quickly. Can you help me?
12. Page 12.
Page 12. Oh,
No,
yeah,
I'm happy
sorry.
to move this.
Thank you. Yeah, we know. Again, sorry. It always seems like such a nothing resolution for such an important discussion, but I'll take it for what it is. Thank you, Riet. Do I have a second, please? Thank you, Josh. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. At 10 o'clock it's morning tea. Thank you for that very good, robust discussion. Let's take that short break and we'll get straight back into.
Page 24.
Right, thank you, everybody. David, welcome to great to have you here. I'm glad to see that in the previous paper we have this risk is moderate, not as which is sort of roughly within line. So, but still keen to hear what you've got to say.
Kia ora, everybody. Taking the report has been read, I'll just give a summary of the points that I'm aware of, and then we'll ask any questions in relation to the report. Three key things. There's been an increased recovery health and safety resource. Thanks indeed. Through that, really good. And we're seeing some really positive outcomes regarding transparency and collaboration between council, contractors, and even the government regulator WorkSafe. Progress on the Olympic pool demolition, ensuring compliance with the asbestos removals. And then positive feedback from staff on recent wellbeing initiatives deployed throughout the council. We've got WorkAble out there now doing some health checks, which is good. And on a side note, I'd like to express the council's appreciation to Chrissy from Here For You, which is a body that's been supportive of the council over the last 2 years post-COVID. Unfortunately, they're closing due to lack of funding, which you've probably seen in the press. Happy to take any questions from the floor.
David, thank you for this. That's tremendous. Okay, questions for David? No? Are we getting complacent with the news story? No, look, in all seriousness, it does repeat good ongoing work, David, which you know, I don't want to dismiss. I think we should recognise that progressively, both in terms of actual work and then actually the quality of the reporting, we can pretty quickly get an assessment that things are in reasonable shape at this stage. Is there any emerging, I mean, you do helpfully provide us with a level of updates from around the sector. Is there anything particularly emerging, perhaps risk-wise, you think we should be aware of?
Not really. As we've alluded to, change of staff turnover, lost 3 health and safety representatives this last month actually. So it's about that training and re-recruiting people and getting up to speed. It does leave a bit of a chasm of inexperience in some areas at times. So that's just an ongoing battle that we all face around the table. And it's not peculiar to Gisborne. Across Bay of Plenty, local area shared services, exactly the same challenges.
Okay. Yes, James.
Just by way of comment, yeah, the team are really sad to lose the services of Here For You, but just in terms of some of the thinking we've been doing about how to fill that gap, because it's still a much needed service. The team are thinking about that, but just recently, and it's not reported in this report, the previous report, it's actually going to be reported in the CE report. We have moved EAP service provider, and our new service provider, TELUS, has got a far broader range of services that they can offer to support us. So that was more coincidental. We certainly weren't anticipating the closure of Here For You, but I just thought I'd let you know that in terms of, you know, where to from here and what does this mean for us as an organisation. We need to still fill that gap. And there will obviously be some things that Here For You have provided, like they've run boot camps for us and a whole range of things. So we'll need to think about how we can still provide you know, that level of service in terms of staff and staff wellbeing.
Yep. Well, any other final thought? Yes, Rob?
Yeah, just around the 27, just around identified health and operational risks. You've got the list of the top 20. And if we're looking at working in the road corridor and contractor management, a big area that we're getting, we're really looking at and getting huge feedback from the public around is around traffic management. So how do you or how does the organisation on the health and safety side of it look, and what parameters do it, like I'm not trying to get around, you know, we're going to allow so many people to get hit by a vehicle or anything like that, but what element of risk, what level of risk are we actually attaining to that? Because we're not going to move that dial if we have got zero tolerance. We're not going to move that dial at the moment when we're told we've got 33, even up to 40% of some roading jobs. The whole cost of that job is going in traffic management. We're in a pretty serious place because that then leads on to the money unavailable then to go into the actual roads, which is our biggest problem we're getting confronted with at the moment. So there's sort of it's a throw-on effect that this situation we're in, and you know, I went to WorkSafe themselves and sort of said, you know, who is it that's saying it has to be this many road cones, and are you telling? And they say, no, it's not us. Well, I was trying to dig out, well, actually, who is, you know, no one seems to say, put their hand and go, yeah, we said. So I just want to know how we can influence that from within our health and safety risk side.
Yeah, it's a good question, Rob. It's one that's been touched on in the past in relation to the roading network. We work closely with the contractors. There are set guidance for traffic management. We've got some people internally. Mo Ruru has been very influential in developing the traffic management. 3 workers were killed about 4 years ago on the Matata Straits. That kind of raised the perception about the importance of traffic management, and therefore I think it's raised the bar about what we need to do to keep our workers safe. We're all about pragmatic approaches to traffic management. We'll go out to talk to contractors to make sure they've achieved what is needed, which is management of that site safely for their workers. But we do know that people actually drive through a lot of these places and abuse the staff on those contractors as well. So it's a balance between doing something proactively safe, but also taking on board that the costs associated with traffic management can be quite steep.
Yeah, because it's not, don't get me wrong, I'm not just solely talking about the cost. The cost side of it is what filters onto then you can't do this with that money. One of the big problems is, and you mentioned at the end, that people are driving through here and abusing staff and whatnot, but after that event at Matata, you know, it seemed to be like it was almost this thing where we're going to put out a whole lot more road cones and that's going to solve the problem. Whereas in fact it's actually created the problem, because now people see orange road cones and they stay out there for that long and there's that many of them that people have become almost glazed over by it. And then the frustration side of it comes into. So look, there's obviously the system at the moment is not working because people are reactive and do something to solve a problem, but creates another problem. So I'm just wondering where we fit into as far as the council's risk factor, then moving that down to our contractors.
Well, it's our ability to influence. The contractors have got the primary duty of care to ensure the safety and to comply with the requirements for the road traffic management. We will go to site and we will check on those conditions to say, have they gone overboard? Why have they got cones on when the site is closed? That's part of our contractor management processes. So we will work collaboratively with the contractors to ensure that we're doing the best for our community, which is the cost savings, but not safety.
I think the direct question is the traffic management guidelines, like the phrase you use, they're ours or they're NZTAs or whose?
They're NZTAs, and there's also some other.
Sorry, I think that's the key point that I think you were asking, Rob. Who do I go to understand who sets the rules? It's NZTA. Yeah.
Do you want to also expand on how those rules were created? Because as I understand it, it was part central, part local, but also part industry as well.
That's right, it was. The industry had a huge part to play in the development of these requirements for traffic management. So it wasn't stipulated by government, this is what you will do. It's a case of what can we do to make things safe and have that basic level of safety which does not compromise excessive costs. So a lot of the contractors had a lot of say in the development of those guidelines. They seem to be working pretty effectively, although sometimes we see too many cones. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Colin, I think you've got a question.
Thank you for the report. Just a question around near misses and the contractors and council staff. Were any of those near misses related to our roading condition?
It's a good question, actually. From memory, over the last 6 months, I think we've had 1 or 2 near misses reported by contractors in relation to people driving through the traffics with the management in place. Yeah, 2, there's a couple. Good point you mentioned though, because the near misses only is 1 in the last month. That seemed pretty low, so I'm getting some more information from the team that run the recovery and response team, which incorporates a lot of our contractors to ensure that we're getting the right reporting. It does seem quite low. But yeah, 2 this year of instances where traffic management has been compromised by poor behaviour from the members of the public.
Supplementary comment really, that I get a lot of comments that there are near misses happening in the public because of dodging potholes and road conditions. And we're in this sort of catch-22. Do we save money in road management, fix the potholes, or not fix the potholes and save people who are fixing the potholes? We've really got to balance that budget to solve the problem, haven't we?
True. I think the issue is that the fines are quite steep from WorkSafe if you're not taking or seem to be taking all reasonably practical steps, which is adhering to the best practice and the good practice guidelines. The fines are significant. The recent fine in this report said $300,000 as a report for not doing pre-maintenance on a vehicle or a forklift. $300,000 would go a long way to eradicating quite a few of our potholes, I would venture to say. So it really is a case of we do need to take safety seriously, but we do need to be pragmatic in how we do that.
Thank you for that. Appreciate the conversation. Anything else that we need to raise with this report? So David, again, thank you for very effective reporting and actually my appreciation that, we're in a, I don't use the word comfortable, but you're only as good as your last game, aren't you? Yeah. I sense you seem to have a reasonably steady over the situation that we should take our eye off the ball.
Thanks, Bruce. It is a team effort. Yeah, a lot of good work.
I appreciate it. So looking at the resolution, I this takes a little bit, and I just want to acknowledge staff. The resolution on page 25 is that we note the content of the report. Move in a second, please. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Josh. Put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you. Can we move on to the 3-year plan update?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I draw the committee's attention to page 42, heading Project Risks. So we are at the end stage of adoption of the 3-year plan, targeting the 27th of June as the adoption date of the 3-year plan. So my immediate focus is on what is going to stop us from getting there, between now and the 27th. So, short period of time, and we passed a significant milestone yesterday with our deliberations meeting, and there's no significant changes to the 3-year plan as a result of the deliberations meeting. So my assessment at this point, the only thing that would stop us from achieving the 27th of June sign-off and adoption is the tight turnaround time between now and the 27th to finalise the report, to have it ready for adoption. This was anticipated in the development of the work program to get us to adoption. I'm confident at this point that we do have the capability and capacity internally to achieve that milestone and target date. Looking beyond the immediate deadline of 27th of June, we are having a deep dive around the doability of what we are committing to under the 3-year plan. Going into that deep dive, there is the ongoing risk around delivery as we implement the 3-year plan. What is driving that? Well, it comes back to whether there are any significant changes to the forecasting assumptions we used to develop the 3-year plan, and a number of external factors. Up front, primarily, we have a new government, or relatively new government, and they are still determining the approach they wish to take to certain things that will impact service delivery at council. We are redeveloping our resource management plan, as an example, and we also have the government's new local waters done well approach. We are yet to have the clarity on what that will actually look like in practice, but we are still under a time pressure to develop a services delivery plan within the next 9 months or so. Alongside that is the ongoing cost of living impact on our ratepayers, and any potential changes to external funding that council is also looking to utilise. Again, we'll pick that up under the deep dive. We've already mentioned or identified the change to Waka Kotahi's funding formula. So broadly at this point, once we get to adoption, it will come back to delivery, and there are a number of external factors that council will need to be across and can manage as best we can within our own resources.
Thank you, Steve. I was having a side chat here with the Dean over morning tea about the 3-year plan, and I'm glad you're confident about the 27th of June. I've got no reason to say, by the way, the 27th of June won't be achieved. But I just want, at this point, on behalf of the committee, to recognise staff's commitment. And I suspect, I should say, your team have probably had to put a lot of time in too, but I want to reflect that actually it won't have been easy, and I know the hours will have been burnt at midnight just to hear. Can I just say well done? I've got a range of, obviously, governance responsibilities. Some councils have chosen to push out meeting their planning responsibilities. There's no easy answer. I couldn't give you an easy way to do it, but actually I suspect in days ahead Gisborne will be happy that it's got through its 3-year plan by the 27th of June. Those that are still trying to plan with the other issues, your doability, 3 waters, will keep on going, and yet they're still trying to plan is a difficult proposition. So look, my appreciation, particularly to staff, but really also to your team, that you're in what looks like the final lap. You sort of crossed the finish line, but you're in the final lap, which is superb. Thank you for that, Steve. Thanks for that update, and particularly with the focus around risk, which should be our focus. Questions or comments? You guys are living and breathing this. You probably feel like you'd had your deliberations yesterday. You're just about done. But is there anything that people would like to raise from a risk perspective at this point? That's what I thought. So look, what Steve, just a couple of, sorry, Josh, if you
No, I'm just saying we're so close. 27th of June is so close.
Yep, and believe you me, my comments now are not to try and derail you from the 27th of June, Josh, so that's absolutely fine. So Steve, we've really said with our main risk paper that with this adoption, it becomes that really important discussion around overall strategy and attainment, and I like the point that you're talking about, that actually the risk function is now going to dovetail in behind the risks of actually achieving what's inside the plan. I think that is really superb. One thing that I would like us as a committee to focus on is actually how we monitor and graft this into our overall risk framework. Because I think it's clear when you go back to the assumptions, we've got our overall strategy, which is really about what do we want to deliver in the way of services to our community. What do we want? We've got finance and we've got assets, just what we've talked about before. So I'll be very keen as we go forward with this 3-year plan, how as a committee we particularly monitor the attainment of those assumptions. Those assumptions are actually really important. It's what you've said, James, about your own, without going back to your personal information, but your mortgage. 2.7 versus 6.85 is a massive change. We need to be monitoring those from a risk perspective, particularly around our financial strategy. So I'll be keen to see how we do that going forward. And again, I'll probably be keen to have some discussions with Pauline and Steve on that one as we go forward. Having got to the 27th, the work actually only starts. And I think I'm just looking to make certain that this committee does its bit in helping with that risk lens to that strategy. So well done, guys. That's good. As I say, it looks like you're probably just about dead on your feet with the whole issue. So unless there's any other comments people like to make, we're okay?
Yep, I'm happy to move this
Thank
report.
you, Riet. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Right. Page 55, we have the motion to move into excluded. But the reasons, I think, are good. Thank you, Riet. Yep. Thank you, Josh. Is there any discussion on the motion to take these items into? Being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say